Hello everyone, my name is Almudena Nido and I'm going to talk about Grendel's mother in the epic poem Beowulf. This analysis proposes an interrogation of the disruption that Grendel's mother causes in the Anglo-Saxon epic poem and how her threat is a social monstrosity due to the subversion of the symbolic order that the warrior community tries to establish. I hope to stress how the ambiguity that critics ascertain to this monster make it unsustainable to limit her to a fixed category even when she is subverting the social divisions that should contain her. To set a context for the poem and the female monster's role in it, I will summarize briefly the poem and I will focus on the parts that concerns this analysis. Hero Beowulf comes to Herod to fight against Grendel, a monster who has been attacking the Hall of the Danes for many years, eating the warriors who sleep in the building. The hero fights against the monster and manages to tear the monster's arm. The monster flees in darkness, fatally wounded. The arm is exposed on the wall of Herod as proof and trophy of the hero's might and strength for all the warriors to see and admire, and celebration for Beowulf's heroic deed proceeds in the hall. And after that celebration, when the warriors are sleeping at night, Grendel's mother appears and she attacks the hall. She takes her son's arm and takes the king's most beloved counselor with her and flees the hall. The hero decides to go to Grendel's mere, the lair of the monsters, where they find a shearer's head on a pike and they see the lake where the monsters live. The hero decides to jump into the waters and dives down to the underwater cave. He is taken by Grendel's mother, who is waiting for him, and they fight fiercely. Grendel's mother, with a knife, tries to kill the hero. Beowulf wins because he takes a monstrous sword that is in the underwater cave and beheads her with it. The hero then beheads Grendel, who is dead in the underwater cave too, and takes both Grendel's head and the swords up to the warriors and to the hall of Herod. Grendel's mother, as a female monster, stands in a peculiar position in all English literature, as if on the edge of too many definitions that cannot seem to contain her appropriately. This may be because she is too remarkable a figure. She fights her own battles. She has been traditionally ignored in criticism, and when incorporated in attempts to explain her, we have contradictory views that only testify to the ambiguity she introduces in the text. This monster certainly disrupts the narrative and makes critics struggle to define her when it comes to the main aspects of her identity. So how much of a monster is she when we compare her to her son and the dragon that is the other monsters? How inhuman is she as the only female monster? Can we really establish some true relationship of comparison with the rest of the female figures in the poem? And then also, if even we consider her as a woman, as a monstrous woman, how can we compare her to the other women, to the other mothers in Beowulf, as that seems to be her most important identification, that of being a mother. Many critics sided with Clever's early gloss of the female monster as an inhuman entity from whose inhuman features Grendel sprang forth, and so have considered her to be monstrous, too monstrous to be analyzed as human. This also has implications to the other contested points in Grendel's mother's characterization. When we talk about her gender, it is true that even though the poem identifies her as female, she is also identified as a masculine warrior in some lines by using nouns which are normally reserved for males and warriors. This, however, would associate her more directly with the other men warriors of the text, and it would therefore attribute masculinity to her as well as reinforce the fact that she is crossing the respective gender lines to act as a warrior. Due to this and her overall excessive agency, she has been left aside many times when the women in the poem Beowulf are analyzed, because her inhuman affiliation and propensities make it hard to distinguish between what is monstrous and what is female. But we always have to take into account that this distinction, this gender divide also responds to the traditional approach that has been pervasive in scholarly tradition when it comes to analyzing female figures in the epic. So it has been very, very common in this analysis to dismiss, condemn, or demonize her and that derives from misogyny and cultural expectations of women. The season aims to give Grendel's mother her humanity back, as Kuhn rereads her as a type of female warrior, and as Alfano argues further by interrogating all the monstrous connotations that have been imposed and layered upon her to show that indeed she is anything else but a warrior, a woman warrior. So it is time to relieve Grendel's mother from her burden of monstrosity and show her as a warrior woman. One aspect of this character that seems that would be unquestionable is her maternity. She is mainly identified as a mother, and this should reinforce her feminine character. That is, by naming this character simply as mother, the poem is reinforcing her feminine identity. Her main identification then for the warrior society of the poem and for the audience of the poem then is her biological function. Is a role that indeed is linking her to nearly all the other women in the poem. There are 5 identified mothers in the poem Beowulf, and Grendel's mother is the only one identified exclusively by her son's name. With no proper name of her own, although that is not remarkable for the standards of the Old English epic, she is nevertheless the most prominent mother in the poem because of her fight against the hero and her antagonist characterization. However, even this characterization as a mother has proved problematic for this female monster. The roles for mothers in Anglo-Saxon literature and in the poem Beowulf have been analyzed by many critics, taking different perspectives and taking into account in different degrees the feminist and gender studies as they have been slowly applied into the field. Some critics still conform to traditional views of the roles of women when it comes to mothers and what constitutes a monster's mother. In the case of Grendel's mother, going so far as to attest how much of a mother she is or she is not, and even how successful a mother she is. Grendel's mother is identified as an anti-queen and as a perverted image of the peace weaver because she is an avenging mother. That would be her main characterization, and then that separates her from the other mothers in Beowulf. This analysis, I will argue that her attack is indeed more effective against the warrior society than that of any other monster in Beowulf. When she attacks Herod, the warrior's reaction reflects the fear that she can instill, that she can provoke in the warriors that are experiencing battle. As Henneking points out, the Danes seem to be more afraid of the mother than of Grendel. If she were as incompetent and harmless as some critics make her out to be, they would have defended themselves properly. And the fact that the hero Beowulf decides to go fully armed against her when he fought her son without weapons speaks largely also about the uneasiness she creates for the warrior society. This has to do with her social monstrosity. And we can see that in several aspects. One of them is the vengeance in warrior society and how she enacts a violent retribution and a blood feud that is understandable by warrior community, which has used weregild to pay gold in retribution for violence to stop the blood feud, or in the case of the poem, to call for a hero's help to deal with a monster who won't settle the dispute. The poem just states that she's taking it too far when she avenges her son, but the narrative shows empathy for her and for her cause, and also it is a concept that is understandable for the warrior society that also uses it. We also have the use of weapons. She uses weapons and provokes the hero to also use weapons against her, both for protection and attack. And it is also remarkable the fact that she is immune to normal weapons and can only be killed by her own sword. We also have the use of violence and how she answers to the spectacle of power done by the hero in the Hall of Heralds. In this case, we can see that in how she recovers her son's arm that was acting as a symbol of power for the hero and of space regained for the Warrior Society after Grendel's attacks. And then she uses this same language of violence, as she does with Eshere's head, to use it as a marker of monstrous space, of her space, of a limit that is her space, that the warriors then, if they want to retribute, they have to cross, they have to pass, but they are forced to see the same symbolic violent language used by her, the same one that they were using with Grendel's arm in Herald. It is necessary to interrogate what the expectations for women in the epic are when critics base the supposed inferiority of women in violence on these specific lines of Beowulf, where it can be argued that we have a comparison between the violent potential of men and women. It is interesting when analyzing this supposed weakness of Grendel's mother as female fighting her own battles to note that the term that is being compared to weapon man are not being compared to women in general, but the context of battle, of fights, and that they in both instances they are using weapons. Otherwise, there would be no point in the comparison. And in the case of Grendel's mother, her attacks are definitely more dangerous than those of her son to the warrior society, because she has her own weapons as part of her monstrous body, her talons, and she has a knife when she fights Beowulf, and there's also an armory in her cave where Beowulf finds the sword. So she is in possession of weapons that she can use, weapons that her son has not used in his attacks. So this shows that the monster understands also this social function of weapons, and also the concept of war guilds and retribution in the warrior community that can use this retribution to contain violence within it. Somehow, by taking back Grendel's arm and taking one of Hrothgar's dear retainers, she shows understanding of the symbolic language that the warriors can also speak. I want to highlight in this analysis that her social monstrosity derives mainly from the fact that her attack is against the momentary peace that is established in Herod after the hero's victory over Grendel. She destroys then what the hero has achieved. As she takes her son's arm from Herod, where it was used as a trophy of the hero's victory, and she takes one of Hrothgar's warriors and then beheads him and uses his head to mark her own space. She's enacting then a blood feud in violent terms, but this is the same symbolic language that Beowulf has used by taking Grendel's arm and exhibiting it in the hall as a way of demarking a space where monsters are mutilated. Blood and flesh then are used as language. Both warriors and Grendel's mother understand that language. Everything for Beowulf up to Grendel's mother's attack depended on that arm, on that piece of monstrous flesh and bone, especially the social bonding of the warrior community after all of Grendel's attacks. And as Baz points out, it is not an arbitrary decision to take the warrior she takes and to behead him. By taking the king's counselor, she shows she understands the important role he plays within the society. Some critics have focused on Grendel's mother's apparent weakness and inferiority to her son's violent potential, but up to that point when she takes Grendel's severed arm and flees Herod, she has effectively avenged her son, and she has destroyed Beowulf's heroic deed in Herod. Because with no trophy to show that the monster has been vanquished, there is no epic. No epic, no tale, and then no hero. So Hrothgar disperses and the nightmare continues. Grendel's mother then is the only monster in Beowulf that disarms effectively the warrior society's attempt at reconstructing itself again after the crisis that Grendel originates. Her threat then is greater than that of her son, as she can work within the social constructs and symbolic language of the warrior society she attacks. A continuation of this analysis then would require to question why Grendel's mother's head is then not chosen to be exposed in the Hall of Heralds. This may be because the hero beheads already dead Grendel and carries his head back to Herald because it is an important social decision and a conscious effect to delete Grendel's mother's presence from the epic. Thank you very much for your attention and your time.